Ondan sonra sana
Samo što kad se čovjek priča. 1, 2, 3, neće se ništa, čuješ ništa, taj dom ono, ne možeš da ono misli, okej, neće se ništa, neće se, čuje se dobro, super, okej, možda budemo uspješni što live onda. Još par minuta krećem. Dvije.
to ne čuješ dobro, ne možeš čuti. Čuli sam jedan stegnuti. Join us.
Let's start with our next meetup. I'm really happy to see this group this large group. Thank you all for coming. Today we have two great talks by William and Alan. Unfortunately, Alan is still taking his coffee after work, so he will join us soon. I will start this meetup with a few announcements and informations, which will be short. We will pick some winners and give away some prizes if winners are present in the meetup. So, as we have seen from our previous meetups, it's obvious that our community really loves panel discussions, and we will try to organize as many as possible in the future. Thank you for all of your feedbacks on joining. Keep up the good work. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. But also, as you know, ZgPHP is very community organized, and we are looking for help, assistance for another organizers that are going to hop in and help us. Hopefully, majority was attending our conference webcam. Also, please leave feedback to our organizers, to speakers, so we can improve the next year. As you may know, or don't maybe know, that every speaker that delivers at least one talk in the season on our user group has free ticket for next webcam. So if you haven't been motivated so far, there is another extra motive for you. And as Lucas said on the closing ceremony, if you have any suggestions for improving the webcam or some great ideas, we are welcome to present your idea, but we really appreciate this last part. I can help with that. So if you notice something was really wrong, slow, or whatever, and you think you can improve it for next year, please reach to it for any organizer. If you want to give a talk on ZgPHP, shoot us a mail, Facebook, ask me later on the meetup, whatever. We are looking for speakers. You can exercise for giving a talk on some conference. Our meetups are really not so formal, so you can at least try to improve your English. So, okay, and today we are doing some prizes again. So if you don't know, we have something we are calling feedback initiative, and we are really trying to encourage every attendee to leave feedback after the meetup, so our speakers can improve themselves. And we are choosing some of the comments from this active season, and we are giving away some really cool prizes. So we are today giving away one PHP Storm license, one Code Anywhere license, and one Lynda.com subscription. And thanks to Webcam Lager that has shared the subscription with us. So far, we have been rattling papers from the envelope, and this was really not so effective, and it took some time. So I created this amazing random, and now you will help me with that, hopefully. So basically, I will ask you for 3 random numbers. Please shout out some numbers. 7. Next one. 23. Okay, next one. 42. And this one is random. So we will copy paste it several times. Okay, raffling. I'm not looking at who is winner. Okay, is Goran Galinec here for his comment on the Bruno Stock framework? Is Goran here? Okay, which prize do you want?
PHP Storm.
Okay, ask me after the meetup. So congratulations. Yeah, and okay, sorry for our viewers. I'm here in front of you. I know I'm not so pretty. Okay, we will just continue to randomize this. If you are interested in how this is calculated, this is ultra cool formula that is multiplying sometimes with whatever rounding. I don't know what's happening here. So basically, I will just copy this and paste another 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Prvo Knežević is here for his comment on our meetup 43 on our ad hoc discussion. Prvo is not here, so sorry, Prvo, you could win something. The golden rule is you have to be present on the meetup when you are winning the prize, so you cannot just shoot feedback and win some prize. Okay, again, 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Silvio. Yeah, cool, awesome, and please fill your last name too. I have no idea who is Silvio, but apparently Silvio is not here. And we are going to do it one more time. So if not, the winner is not here. Sorry for that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, okay. So I think it's the same number. Yeah, and you cannot win the prize for the same comment, but if it was a different comment, you would win another prize. It's one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Lovro, is Lovro here? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We can win a subscription for any license. Okay, great, awesome. Nobody wants anywhere. I don't know why. Okay, and there is one more thing I want to say. Please don't go away home as soon as meetup is done. We are going to calling on somewhere near for drinks. We can enjoy the evening and talk about PHP or non-work related stuff. And that's it. Basically, I would now like you to give a round of applause for our speaker, Willem. Okay, for those who may not know, feedback. If you want to win a prize, you have to leave feedback on joined in. There will be entry for this meetup. It's not available yet, but in a few days, I cannot do it without Miro. So ZgPHP cannot work without Miro. So, I treba ti vjerojatno i projektor.
Okay, turn around 3 times.
Hi everybody. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about full stack development and why my turn actually that's called full stack in 1 month. I'm Willem. I'm a software developer here at Zagreb in Perm Quality Gordian. I work mostly in PHP and JavaScript. I also like TypeScript, which I get a lot of hate about. And I'm some kind of jack of all trades because I do a lot of DB stuff, I do a lot of OS stuff. I work on Android, I do data science and all other sorts of stuff. I also write documentation. So let's talk about the myth of full stack. I often get that full stacks are some kind of unicorns that don't exist, or if they exist, they are so rare that you can't find. So let's start with some simple question. Who here is a PHP developer? Cool. Okay, who here works with some type of front-end JavaScript? I don't know, ES6, 5 TypeScript. Great. Okay, how many of you have worked with different types of DBs? MySQL, Maria, Postgre, NoSQL. Cool. How many of you have set up some kind of server, local Linux? Great. All of you that raise your hand at least twice are full stack. And since this is a PHP meetup, we are talking about web, and we are talking about this setup of stacks. So you have your OS, you have your DB, or some kind of web server, then you have back code, front code, and it all looks pretty on the outside. Most of the time, most of us work on several layers in this full stack. And this is some kind of definition. What is a full stack developer? So full stack developers are persons that know a lot about different layers in production and are masters of some, or maybe none, or maybe all. And when I said this masters of some, I'm going to go over this expression. So how many of you have heard about this jack of all trades, master of none? Yay. Cool. This is actually one of the most often asked questions for me when I say that I'm into full stack. Like, so you're really good at all, but not good at anything. And I'm going to work on that throughout this presentation. For me, full stack developers are actually good developers that know a lot and they use that knowledge to make life easier for everybody they work with. I mentioned some platforms, and I divide them either on language-based or layer-based. So when we talk about language-based, we have all of these languages. And one thing that I wanted to actually test is to see, can we find a language that nobody worked here in. So I'm just going to skip PHP, Node, Java. I worked in Java, so I'm going to skip it. Kotlin, do we have any Android developers? Yes, this one. C#, C++, great. Has anyone worked in Go? Cool. R? Yeah, cool. Pascal? Yeah, great. Erlang? I've done some stuff already. Has anyone worked in Whitespace? Yes. That's the one that nobody likes. That's the one with spaces and tabs. So you can see that everybody has worked on something, and we can use that as a pro for some kind of cool stuff, but we'll see. More important platform division is when we talk about layer-based. So you start with your, as I mentioned before, your OS, then you go through some data modeling, which is basically your database. Then we go over some business logic or API. That's your backend code. You're going to do it in PHP most, sure, but you might even do it in C#. I don't know. Does anybody like here? Here likes .NET? No. Yeah. No, you put your hand down. Then we go over some user interface experience, which is some type of front-end development or even mobile. And when we talk about this separation, I put first 4 into backend. I think that we can all agree on that. The second 3 are in front-end design, and we can place mobile somewhere here. And now that we've gone over the basics of some full stack, let's go over some pros and cons. And I'm not going to list, okay, these are good stuff, these are bad stuff. I'm going to try to explain why each stuff is good and why each stuff is bad, and then we're going to have, well, is it a pro or not? Okay, so first one is cross-platform knowledge. You learn a lot of stuff. You're going to learn at least 10 new languages. You're going to work on multiple platforms. You're going to learn patterns on Android, then you're going to apply them on web or vice versa. You're going to implement some knowledge from your backend code in your DB, because maybe that serves your purpose. And that's good for me. I've actually got one benefit from this when I started working on Android. And there they have an architecture that's called MVP, Model View Presenter. It's like MVC, but a little bit different. And the thing why I started learning Android was because I started working on web apps. And why not learn from the best guys who actually do apps all the time? They must do something good. And when I learned it, I've seen, okay, I can implement this app architecture on JavaScript. And when I actually tried it on one project, it turned out to be great, because the mobile guy that implemented the Android app and I that implemented it in TypeScript, we had exactly the same code, basically. And we both worked over the API, and it was cool. We reused some code. Bad thing about cross-platform knowledge is the cross-platform knowledge. You're going to learn a lot about different platforms. You're going to try to put stuff that aren't supposed to be on one platform there. Like if you use some specific pattern in on backend, it might not be the best pattern that you're going to use on front end in your JavaScript or on your Android app. So now, who's up that it's a pro? I'm okay. Who's against it? Well. Okay. Next one is reusable code. So I'm going to just suppose that all of you have heard about mean stack. That's the other side. We don't talk about them because we don't plan. So mean stack is a stack that uses Mongo, Express, Angular, and Node. Yeah. So it's built mostly JavaScript. And once you get there, you can write your apps in React or React Native, and you can just publish it on all platforms that you usually have to write your native code. Now, you get a lot of this reusable code because you can write it cross platforms. And what's the bad thing? It's again that you have things that aren't supposed to be where they are. It's one-threaded asynchronous, and it maybe shouldn't be applied on Android app, or you could write a more better native. So, who's up for reusable code? And like that. Okay, consistency. We are all PHP developers. We have all retrieved rows from DB as an array. And raise your hand if you forgot to cast it on API, if you forgot to cast a number into a real number from string on your APIs. Okay, and if you done it again, raise your other hand. Okay, and one thing that actually started to bother me is that I forget this a lot of time. If you have a good ORM, okay, great, you're lucky. But if you sometimes forget about this, or you are working in WordPress, for instance, and you will get numbers as strings. And when you pass this over the API, and your mobile guy comes and he tries to run some type of math over it, he's going to get exceptions because he maybe didn't check his output. He believed to his API guy that you are actually, and you screw that guy. You have to get a bug report and fix that afterwards. So one thing that helped me when I started doing full stack and when I learned on different platforms, I started to think about this a lot sooner. Well, when I was building an API, I was starting thinking about, okay, this is a number. This is going to be used on iOS, on Android. They don't have dynamic types like we do in PHP. They have specific types. They have strict types. Then they need to either parse it or cast it. But if I have a documentation that says that I'm going to send a number, well, I'm going to start thinking about it a lot sooner. What's the bad stuff? Well, I wouldn't say a lot about consistency. It actually helps you a lot. And the only bad thing that I found myself was I was doing a lot more that I wasn't doing before. So is that kind of a con? Well, for PMs it is. So pros, cool. Innovations. Well, that's one thing that actually intrigues me the most about full stack, and that's when you start to learn new stuff on different platforms. For instance, I was primarily a PHP developer. Then I started doing some front end, and I started to separate my code into all different partials, and I applied good patterns around them. Then I went into Android. They don't have the they don't have pure HTML. They basically implement all their logic while they are implementing all their views as they are implementing their logic. So you often get hard-coded views that are basically copy-pasted into a new view. And I went, when I was working my first mobile project, I actually stumbled upon this because I had to build I had to build a feed, and it had all sorts of different things like images. It had some blog posts. It had comments. And first thing that I did, that I had my experience with back and front developer, was okay. I need to separate this, and I just need to call those views inside of these loops. And I did it. I pushed it to Git. I brought up a code review. I brought up a pull request, and the mobile guy that actually code reviewed it, he was like, "Wow, that's really cool. We can reuse this on different stuff. I'm going to start using that." And he actually started using that more often. And that was one point where innovations were cool. When it was bad, I learned React recently, and with it Redux. And then I tried to implement Redux on Android, because why not? I want to try it. I mean, you have a huge community, you have a bigger community on web, and in React, then you have on Android. So they have to know something. I mean, they're building their apps like that. It's good. And I started doing it on Android, and I don't know, a week in, I was like, oh my god, really? Why did I do that? I had a really stable architecture that performs really good, and I tried to push something new into it, and that was the point where innovation wasn't that good. But now I know that I won't do Redux on Android. Learning process. Well, that's basically, you have to learn a lot. You have to learn always, and you must never stop. That's one of probably biggest disadvantages for all sorts of developers, that you have to be on top of everything. You can't track only one channel. You can't be on one slide. You have to flood yourself with information and just try everything all the time. It will take some out of you. You'll probably work 2 hours more each day than other guys, but it really helps a lot. So let's get back to this. Well, jack of all trades, master of none. How many of you know the whole saying? This is actually not the whole saying. Does anyone here know? Really? Oh, good. So it's sometimes better than master of all. So if you are working most often only one platform, you're gonna get stuck in it, and probably not try stuff outside of your comfort zone, which might even improve your code. So now when someone asks me if I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, I just reply them with this saying. And that's it. Thank you. Questions? I'm expecting some, please.
Do you sometimes feel like being full stack developer is slowing you down in being senior developer or extremely good developer, for example?
Yeah, it sometimes feels like that, but then I start thinking in another way. Is being a senior developer in only one field good enough? Like, I want to do a lot of stuff, and I want to be good at all stuff. And if I mainly focus on one thing, I'm afraid that I'm gonna, lock myself into it. So that's the difference. Why I think that when I learn all this stuff, it's not gonna slow me down. I think that it's just gonna propel me even more, because I can implement different stuff. I know how I can help other people, and for me, that's a case why I am going to continue being a full stack developer.
So if you're doing a project, like a private project, not limited by some works around, so I think, how do you choose the platform or language you start?
Well, lastly, it's by intuition, or if it depends. If it's some kind of a pet project, then I'm gonna try something new, probably. That's something I want to improve myself in. But if it's some serious project, I'm probably gonna go with PHP, and on front I'm gonna work in TypeScript, because those are my two, I think, best features that I can implement. And that's basically my view on stuff, how I decide in which I'm going to work in. Any more questions?
So in your company, you're working full time as a backend developer, frontend, or full stack?
I'm a backend developer.
Okay. So
Yeah,
do you sometimes get frustrated by the way frontend team develops something and like I can do it much better?
Yeah.
And what's your approach, and do you try to explain them, or you just accept it?
Yeah, it's not like you did this wrong. It's like, it's good, it works, it's great, but maybe we could try this a little bit different second time. And then now I have several projects that I did. When I did this, I could reuse this in there. I oftentimes come to our front-end developers, and I refactor with them some part of the code, and they will see, okay, now this has a lot of sense. And then I show them on that other project that maybe I worked on how it became better because we implemented something in this way or that way. But it doesn't get frustrated. Yeah, you're always thinking, oh, why could we do this better? And I don't know, but that's the point. You gotta help each other also.
So what would you suggest to someone who wants to become a full stack developer? How to start? Is it like trying new projects with new platforms? Or?
I think that it mostly depends on you as a developer. For me, it really helped to work on open source projects, where, for instance, I choose React, and I chose a couple of open source projects. I did some work. I pushed it to Git. I opened a pull request, and I got a review from the person that actually knows it. and you can learn a lot fast like that. One thing that also helps me is reading books. I'm that type of guy. I like paper, and when I read something, it mostly stuck with me. But one thing that I also did is I had a small project where I worked on code. Everybody here knows Bella, right? Bella, Croatian Hungarian game, and I did a score tracker for it, and I wrote it as a pure PHP script, so Node.js. Then I wrote it in pure Node. Then I did it in Angular 2 and React. I did it as a mobile app, and at the end I wrote it as a React Native app. So to test all sorts of possibilities that I can. Maybe that's the approach for you also. Did I answer?
Yeah, very good.
Any more questions? Oh, don't be shy.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we are having a 15-minute break, so you can grab your smokes, coffee, or whatever you are trying to dive from. See you in 15 minutes.
Tell you what we're gonna do a song for you next. And I want everybody to sing. In the air. You know a song called Thunderstruck? That's good. Can you join in with us?
Satisfeito, Brasil. ZgPHP.
called Polish and Rock. You ready? Okay, guys, get him on if you got him. Excuse us, girls. Woo.
Okay, are we ready? Yes, we are. Give me one big applause for our focus. Thanks. So, hi everyone. My name is Alan, and I work in the code. So the idea of talk today is to round up some of the general terms, ideas, and concepts regarding HTTP caching, and also share with you how we did and solved some problems that we had while trying to get the best at HTTP caching. How many of you are doing any kind of caching in your projects? And how many of you are doing HTTP caching in your projects? Okay, so there is a lot of audience that want to hear something new. Let's try to figure out some common ground on what HTTP caching really is. So we can say the HTTP caching role of HTTP caching is to defend our application on the HTTP layer. So there are some pros to that. We can actually do that kind of caching that's decoupled from our application. What is a con? Well, the same thing. Our caching might be decoupled from our application. What would make up our, what is the goal of HTTP caching? So the service can be a lot faster. They can handle a lot of traffic. The number you see here, 2 to 1,000 times faster, is actually depends on your implementation. We'll go a couple of examples later on. The search engine is really a lot of fast sites, so there are some dollars in for you or for your client for your product. And one funny thing, it's environmentally friendly, because if you don't need as many servers to serve your content, you actually have a less carbon footprint. So, what to make up our HTTP caching in our project? So, what do we do? So, first, of course, we need the HTTP standard. So, HTTP standards gives us a boost to baseline and communication how we can do HTTP caching. We need to have some kind of caching strategy. So, figure out what do we need to cache when, how long, how to handle any kind of scenarios in that caching. Next, we need a technology. So we need to figure out what are we going to actually use to do our HTTP caching. And last, we need to implement. So we need to define what our application will be, where did we put, and how it will be together. So these are most focus on the last things. So technology and implementation. One thing that one thing that HTTP caching can bring to us is releases of stress from our application. Funny story, it's actually written somewhere in a lot of the HTTP caching, in general caching blogs. It's like, oh, we can drink off of our servers now. So we actually tried it, and you can do something like that. So that's nice.
So where would the HTTP caching fit in our image? So this is a simplified image of most setups you have. It can vary from certain things, but so you have a client that sends out some requests, and it usually ends up in your application, and it gets responded back to the client. So HTTP caching comes in the middle, so in front of our web server, and after the first request, it no longer goes to the server. If it doesn't happen, it can just return the response directly to the client. So now that we can kind of agree on what is the client, what is the server sides of these two things, we can look at it. What are their responsibilities? So on the stack, you would also a lot of times see something called edge. So depending on your HTTP technology, role of edge layer is also on the HTTP side. So what would be server-side responsibilities of our HTTP caching setup? So server-side is to give correct response headers so that whoever is communicating, consuming those responses knows what to do about the resources that it received. It's also responsible for storing our cache, so it figures out how it want to do, what to do, and so on. And it also determines what to do when there is a request, when the request arrives at the server. So does it need to go to the backend? Does it need to just give the cache? Does it need to do both things at the same time? There are cases where it needs to do both at the same time. What are some commonly used response headers? You've also probably all of you have seen cache control headers, which is actually a cache control policy header, where you define all the rules regarding your cache control. There are some older, or I would even say deprecated, but are not actually deprecated, like Pragma and cache headers. So on the client side, what does the client have to do? Well, it needs to read and interpret those response headers. So, and another word that is actually important here, it should obey. So if the server says something like, okay, this is valid for 1 minute, don't bug me, it is expected from the client to actually don't bug the server. Again, if we have HTTP caching layer as well, then we can protect our server by using our HTTP caching as an intermediate client for those responses. And the client can also send proper request headers. So it needs to communicate two ways with our server saying, okay, I can do this, can you do this, do you know about something? Again, it's all done using the cache control headers. So both the client and the servers can use the same headers to negotiate their exchange. We all love standards. We have the HTTP standard, which is rather bread. I will not go a lot into HTTP standard itself. It's huge, it's big, and it's probably just to discuss the HTTP and all this related stuff would take probably a few times. So just to give you like a few pointers and encouragements, IRC is a good place to see. It's boring, it's tedious, it has a lot of words in it, big words, but usually you don't read it all at once. You search for the stuff that you need to figure out, okay, how it's supposed to behave, and then you can compare it with your implementation to see it's actually behaving the way Google, so use it. And there are some good summaries of how to do HTTP caching, what to read about and what not. SymphonyDocs has good guidelines for that. Google Developers Web Fundamentals has a couple of articles on it. And of course, Mozilla Development also has good pages where you can read about HTTP caching in regards to the HTTP standard. Let's try to dig into some scenarios. So in our real-world example, when we look at it from an academic point of view, we have something like this. So we have a simple web page that has some URL and it has some content, some body that is returned. So what we want to do is say, okay, I want this body to be cached for 1 hour. So for the next hour, my server should not receive requests for this page because I said it's valid for 1 hour. Usually, this is not really realistic. We are looking more at something like this. So Our web page is composed of several parts, several little fragments, several components that usually are valid with a different time. So we have a header that should be refreshed at least once a day. We have a body of our content, which should maybe refresh once every hour. We have some kind of latest widget that usually needs to be at least less than 5 minutes old. And then we have some ads delivery that should never be cached. So it always has to be like really good. So looking at this, well, we can't actually do all of this on one page because, as we've seen before, request is cached as whole. So we kind of have a problem, but don't despair. There is another thing that exists that really can help us out. Those are ad-side includes. How many of you actually have heard or used already ad-side includes? Okay, so more than HTTP caching, which is interesting, but good. Okay, so ad-side includes, like trying to put it in lay terms, it's basically, it enables us to put small HTML placeholders in our HTML that is then parsed by Edge, that includes hints, to replace it with some real content. So for example, what we have here is like an example of Edge as an include snippet where it says, okay, on this place, please put this components header response. So the Edge would go into the backend, fetch this content, and just put it on this place. So kind of like it's HS, but on server side. Another thing is that you don't have to do it manually. So another example is if you're using Symfony, this is what you would do. You just say, okay, just put an SCI component here that is fetched from this URL, and you're done. So both Symfony and Varnish have good support for as it includes, so you really don't have to do a lot of work. So now that we take as it includes into perspective, how would our example actually? So it looks better now because now we have a solution to our problem. So we have a page, and the scaffolding itself will be cached for a month because we don't usually change the structure of our site. So it's safe for a month. We have a header, which again is still 1 day, but it's fetched from another location, so it can be separately cached because it's a request of its own. And we do the same for the body, for the latest, and for the ad, we just leave it without cache. So, and it works. With this, we can get really good performance out of our caching system because you can really fine-tune, fine-grain all of your page. You can even have components within components, so both you can have another 5 that includes for whatever it serves. So it can really go really down, really. So another thing that we can use HTTP caching for, if you are serving a lot of widgets or just one widget. So one scenario would be you have a widget that you serve to a third-party site that they just include. The usual problem is that you cannot control the traffic on those sites. If that site doesn't do any caching or anything, it will basically ping your widget every time the page is loaded on their site. Which, if you want to put widgets on a lot of sites, which means you probably have more traffic on your widgets than on your actual site. And it will eventually crash your site because somebody will have a big traffic spike, your servers will not be able to handle it. HTTP caching will rescue, just cache the widget, especially because you know how often your widget needs to be refreshed, needs to be invalidated and reloaded with some other content. Another thing that most of us are doing because it's cool or we need it or it works for our projects, we do have HTTP APIs. Simple ones as RSS feeds or any kind of XML feeds, to mobile APIs, to microservice responses. Those are all HTTP communications, and we can use HTTP cache to put it in between and have a safe way of dealing with it. Another good thing that we all use libraries. I would dare to say most, as far as I know, most these libraries have a good support for cache control headers. So they will do the job for it. They know how to handle it. They know what to do. Mobile developers, if you have them in-house or if you are outsourcing somewhere else, ask them, but they will most likely say, yeah, no problem, we can do this, we can handle it. And they will be also glad because it will make their life easier. Because their app will also be more responsive because they will now know that your homepage can be safely cached for 5 minutes. So if the mobile user opens the homepage 3 times in 5 minutes, it will be just 1 request instead of 3, which usually should be. Static resources. We also static resources. And another funny thing is that when it comes to static resources, anyone who wants to get a good SEO ranking is already doing pre-caching or any kind of caching optimization. So you all say for your resources, yeah, Google, it's okay. You can the browser can save you for 30 days or 1 month. So you're already doing it. So if you just put HTTP caching layer in front of your application, that layer will already use your information and it will even improve your output. There is one story I tried to find, but I couldn't find the original story. But we all know Git raw, so we all use it. There is a use case several years back. Git raw, they didn't have as elaborate system as they do today. So there was a case where some Japanese site used Git raw JavaScript files to include them directly to their site, like a CDN. And they had a huge traffic spike, and the GitHub went down. And the guys at GitHub were panicking. They could not figure out why this happened. So in that panic moment, somebody said, hey, can you just put the HTTP cache for a few minutes? So they pulled up the HTTP cache, the raw continued serving, but it was no longer crashing the whole Git. Later on, they found out that there's some Japanese site that used them as CDN, and it worked for them until they crashed the whole Git. So again, Git HTTP caching, as I'll also mention later, is not something that you need to have full. It's something that can help, in a lot of different ways. If you look at the CDNs are most cases nothing more than HTTP cache. So they don't rely on reading a lot of stuff from the hard drives. That's not where they earn money. They earn money from serving it lightly. So it's memory. So again, HTTP cache. Another example that most people don't see or don't think about that way, error pages. How many of you had a situation where you had an error page and it caused you more problems? The repeating errors caused more problems than the error itself, like bringing down the monitoring, spamming with emails, blocking the whole server because somebody included something. So again, HTTP caching can't do that for you. One simple thing that we use on some tricky situation, just put 1 second cache on your 404 and 500 responses. You don't need to know that every user crashed the site because of some widget. You know it the first time, so just focus on fixing it. And meantime, the rest of the site will work because all of a sudden your HTTP cache will have that one inset component to say, okay, I don't have a response, but the rest of the site will work. The users will get that one. It can also help from keeping your monitoring up. We keep further use Symfony. We like Symfony, and we haven't had problems solving all of our problems with Symfony. So how many of you actually use Symfony? How many of you have tried using Symfony and don't use it anymore? I won't ask why, I'm just curious. Okay, and how many of the Symfony users are doing HTTP caching with Symfony? Okay. When it comes to doing Symfony, there are two sides. Again, the server side, so how can we do responses, proper header responses in Symfony? So there are two ways. If you are returning the responses directly from the code, just set response interfaces already have prepared methods. So you can just say, hey, just put max age on this one for 1 day, for 1 minute, or 1 second. If you prefer annotations, there's already annotation for cache control as well. So you can just say, oh, for this action, put it in 1 day. Again, when it comes to caching, it's not like you just put it in one place and it works. There are several places where you can actually tweak and modify the behavior of your HTTP headers or the results. Another thing that comes closer to HTTP caching is custom headers. So there are a lot of headers that either additionally describe your page that is used by the caching engine or by the client. Vary is one header that's not being used anymore because it's part of the cache policy, but it's a header that tells the caching to the site how you can vary the cache. Another thing that you can do, especially with the cache layers that can be programmable, so edge kind of layers, you can set custom headers from your application that will help instruct your application what to do about this response. So it's not like just cache and dynamic it. You can actually control additional behaviors. Another thing that is that we use a lot and it's really, really great, it's describing your content. There's a couple of terms about it, tagging or hash tool if you've heard of it. But in a nutshell, it's for each response, add a header that somehow describes your response. So in our case, we say for this response, okay, this has this is component header, and it has article 451 and media 55. Right now, it doesn't mean a lot if you look at that way, but if when we look at the HTTP cache side, it will make more sense. So once your code is actually providing the correct information to the HTTP headers, you need to set up your HTTP cache layer. Symfony already has support to act as a HTTP reverse proxy server. So there are actually very little steps how you can achieve it. So you just need to wrap your kernel in cache. You can customize the full PTL, and I would recommend that you do it. If you're not sure how it will affect your behavior of your application, just put it to 0. So say, don't cache anything, just leave it. If you know that you're okay, you can put everything cached for 1 minute, and then you can remove the cache for the stuff that you don't want to be cached. You can customize storage. So by default, Symfony is using file system to store the cache objects. But you can, because it serves RISE interfaces, you can implement your own. For example, Redis, and it's really fast. We didn't have a performance problem. Of course, Symfony is good resources, so you can read up on their site more about some tips, tricks, and how to get even more out of your HTTP caching and in general your performance. So Symfony is, as a cache server, is good. It's coupled with the code, so it's on one place. But eventually, depending on the size of the project or on your needs, you will need something bigger. And for us, we needed a bigger boat. A Vash. So how many of you have heard about Vash? Okay. And how many of you are actually using it or have used it? Vash is a cache HTTP reverse proxy. It actually doesn't mean a lot. They put it more in sales page mode. So you put it in front of your application to cache your responses. That's the sales page, and it's actually pretty good. It describes exactly what you want to do. You want to put something in front of your application to help you with performance and with resources. One interesting thing, Vash. So if you use some other reverse proxy servers, most of them can talk to PHP. Nginx can do it. Apache doesn't. I won't go there. That Apache is a full-on reverse proxy. So you need to do something in the front end. So we use Nginx in front of FPM, and then we have Varnish out of Nginx. Varnish is one thing I really like about Varnish. They have a good resources. They actually wrote a Varnish book. It's being updated every time they have something new, and it's around 330 pages, but it's really good read. It shows a lot of what they did and how they meant for you to use it. So it will give you, I would say, most of the answers you need to really use it like in lightweight sense, but also to have a full caching as well. Varnish comes with its own configuration language. They call it a finite state machine. It sounds very fancy. It kind of is as well, because with state machines we kind of used to having some really predictable flows, but this time it's kind of, it eventually gets to the end, but sometimes it can go a longer route or a shorter route. So the language itself has some good constructs. So You can split your code, import some additional libraries, but it also has some weird stuff that it just needs to get used. Again, the book is a really good resource for that. So, for example, a simple VCL configuration would be we define what version we are talking about, we import some of built-in functionalities, we say where our backend is, and we instruct Varnish to use our backend. And that's it. So if you just do that, Varnish will cache your responses based on the HTTP headers that you send from your code. So when we're doing it with Varnish, we use VCL to define the behavior of Varnish. We tell them how to behave in certain situations, not only requests and responses, but also some data within those responses. VCL can also be used to manipulate heavily your responses, and so it does sound all like that manipulate my response, but actually it has a really good benefits. You can remove some data that you might find sensitive. You can optimize your responses using the Varnish instead of your application, and you can also add additional information to your responses when it comes to debugging or just the general performance. Varnish itself is a service you run on your server. You can set it up as high availability. From our experiences, active with Varnish is really weird because you have two caching engines that don't communicate between themselves. So you send one request to the server, it goes to the backend. Then you send another request to the server, this one goes to the backend as well. But wait, isn't caching just going once? But you have to cache it. So from our experiences, active passive is the way to go. Varnish is like really robust. So if you have one instance going down, you just put up another one, it will work, it will survive. I won't go into much detail about the internal implementation of Varnish, but it has a queuing mechanism, so it really knows how to handle the pressure well. We actually tried, so we had a live project where we said, okay, what would happen if we switched to Varnishes? So one was completely hot, doing everything, other one was like really cold, just started, switching up, nobody noticed. So it really can handle a good amount of pressure. Yes, Nginx can do it also, but I cannot say, we haven't had a lot of experience. There are some good articles I've seen written on how you can set it up, but for me it seems like you're really pushing it. So Nginx can do a lot of things, but HTTP caching, there are better tools. So my recommendation would be go with Varnish. So now that we've seen some of the technology, we can dive into some problems. Like everyone knows here what are the two hardest things in IT. Examples that we will go over will mostly be focused on how to implement the Varnish as yes, invalidation. When looking at invalidation, there are two groups of invalidation regarding HTTP caching. So one is active, which means there is some external action. There is some action to invalidate the content, and then there's passive. One example of passive invalidation is lifetime. So basically, you say, okay, this object is valid for 1 minute, and after 1 minute, it's invalidated by the engine. So no action. For active invalidation, there are several implementations depending on what service you use. Most of the HTTP caching engines support the purge request. You just say purge this URL, and the caching server will be. Varnish has some additional functionalities. You can invalidate by regex, which is actually not as nice as it sounds because, yeah, there are better ways. As I mentioned before, for us, XT is a really good way, or tagging, which is commonly a more general term. So you tag your content and you just say to the Varnish, hey, just delete everything with tag article 55. It will invalidate any objects that have this tag. And of course, the last one is just flush all, so you can purge all of it. Invalidation based. So I showed this example before. So let's say we have a header component that's serving itself. So it's a header component. It has article 41 and media 55. These are whatever you want text. So we just use type and ID. And then we have a latest article controller, which serves latest articles, and it serves 3 articles, 451, 450, 448. So then we can just go, if, for example, we have a use case where Article 451 was changed or unpublished, or we just need to invalidate any objects that are serving that content. We go to our varnish and say, okay, can you just purge anything that is tagged with XT 451? So it will just invalidate any objects that have this tag. Another good thing that we use in conjunction with XT is a soft purge. Soft purge basically means mark the object as invalid, but don't delete it. I might need it later. And with that comes another term that is also commonly used in HTTP caching, which is grace, or stale content. So grace is the time that you are allowed to serve stale content. Couple of examples. So you invalidate this component, but it takes time for the HTTP cache to go to the backend to fetch new content, but some visits already arrived. So we can just give him stale content because we know with next request he will get new content. Of course, this works when this makes sense. So you will not serve stale bank apps to your client, to your user. They won't like it. One guideline that we give here is if you do use tagging, don't hesitate to tag. Tag everything. Tag it either by its function or by its content. It will save you a lot of hassle. It will give you like really good tools to invalidate only what you need. So we will not invalidate more than you actually need. We've all heard that one. So yes, caching is easy. Just put everything to one-day cache and we're good. So what if the content changes? We need to have some kind of invalidation. So a couple of practical examples. But before that, how can you actually get started? If you want to get started with varnish, step one would be just use a Docker image. Download it locally, play with it in your development environment, see how it affects your application. Another thing that I would highly recommend, if you want to utilize HTTP caching, it doesn't have to be a new project. You can do it on the existing one as well. Just put an HTTP cache today in front of your application. You don't have to utilize it. Then, when you develop new features, start using HTTP cache. So you can have half of the site that is purely served on the backend. But with time, you can creep up and just put one feature at a time using HTTP cache when you need it. Another good resource when it comes to configuration of varnish, there are a lot of good examples of configurations for your projects. Everything that has to do with sanitizing your headers, making sure that you don't make some dumb mistakes, like I'll go with a couple of examples. So, internet is a good friend. So, what kind of examples do make sense? One maybe obvious one is, okay, short ETL versus invalidation. So, what should we do? Well, both. Again, it depends on your needs. If you have a content that you know is valid for 5 minutes, use ETL. Most of the times, you will not have to invalidate it. For some content that is changed, that you cannot predict, for example, you have an article. That article might be changed every day, or it might be changed 3 weeks from now. Just save it for a week, month, depending on what's your user habits. And when the change comes, you can invalidate it. So use that as guidelines, how to approach it. Another thing that's actually pretty hard doing HTTP caching is handling cookies and sessions. Basically, set cookie headers breaks your cache. Any cache mechanism by default will see a cookie and say, oh, no, I cannot touch this. No, this is wrong. But there are some situations where it's actually okay. A lot of times, we don't use no cookie domains. Why? It's precisely because of the browser. Because when the browser gets a cookie, he will send it there. He will break your cache. But you can instruct your varnish or caching engines to say, okay, this request is okay to be cached, even if it has cookies. Just remove it. So if you remove the cookies, it will cache the content. And when the next visitor comes, he will take his cookies, he will put them somewhere safe, he will fetch the content, and it will again return the cookies like nothing happened. So varnish configuration is really good with that because you can define its behaviors. You can react to a lot of things. Sessions, again, so there are a couple of ways you can actually put cookies okay, sessions are different stuff. There are a couple of ways to handle those two cases. So one is define paths, your URL patterns, where you know that it's either safe to cache them no matter what, or some URLs where you know it's never safe to cache. For example, /user/, you know this is user stuff. You will never cache it because you don't want to give to other visitors this data that other user has. Like for example, Steam, which they did with their shopping carts. They had a library, they cached the library, and they served to all the clients the same library. So you open your library of games and you see somebody else's games. URLs are one thing. You can also have your backend application use custom headers to instruct to the varnish, hey, this component is safe to cache no matter what. If I accidentally send cookies, or the browser sends me cookies, so I have to keep them in, just remove them, it's okay. So again, this is where your application comes close to your HTTP cache. But they can, if you learn them to communicate, they can do a really easy job. Yeah, again, it's basically HTTP errors. So you open your Sentry because you figured out something is going on with the production, and you get this. Well, this happens when you have too many errors sent to the Sentry. Unfortunately, this happens. So again, what can we do? So okay, so we are getting the errors, but we need to look at what's actually happening. Sentry is down. Okay, boot up the Sentry again. Sentry comes up, Sentry falls again. So what to do? Well, just do the 1 second detail on those errors. The first error will give us, in most cases, all the information we need to figure out what's happening. But the rest of them will not crash our Sentry, our monitorings, or even our servers. Error pages are okay. Another thing that Varnish has is tools to access its statistics. So if you actually need to know how many certain errors have occurred, go to the Sentry, go to the Varnish, ask him, hey, how many occurrences of this did you have? So you can use it as well. Understanding grace and stale content. On first sight, grace and serving stale content is like, yeah, it's the best thing ever. You don't have to worry about anything. If you cannot provide the content from the backend, you can serve stale content, everyone's happy, clients are served. How many of you actually know about this? So, best before and expires. If you look at your honey, it has this one, best before. Isn't like honey lasts forever, why? So, and if you look at your milk, it says expires, yes. Don't use it after that day. But there are some things that are safe to use after this day. This is just some defense from the manufacturer saying, hey, if you use it after that, it will probably not be as good as the good stuff is. Again, we can apply the same thing to our content. There is some content that you can save stale for 1 minute, for 1 second, until you actually prepare the content. If it's safe, the consumers will not notice the stale content. They will be saying, oh, I got a quick response, this site is awesome. And you have time to go into the back and then solve your problem. Again, it's now all great. You can buy back. Grace and stale content by default says that when a client comes and the current content is invalid, serve the stale one and go to the backend. So what happens if our user submits a vote to the poll? He will get the stale results. So there are some cases where, although it sounds great, you need to be extra. For the polls, there are a couple of solutions. You can just warm up the cache before the next request. So when you validate it, you warm it up, and you can make sure that your visitor will get it. Again, utilize custom headers. Simple example is just saying, okay, this is the cache needs. Again, what kind of age this is. So you can use those either for debugging, but it can also be used just to give our clients, give somebody who is communicating with us more information what's going on. So when it comes to debugging, and you will debug. If you, whatever you're doing, you will debug. Let's just be honest about it. And everyone is like, okay, it's something that's stored somewhere else. I'm scared. From our experience, you don't have to be. Debugging of HTTP caching debugging is actually pretty good because you can send all the data you want by yourself. So you can say, just expose all of this. Again, it's not safe, so you can use whitelisting to say, okay, if this is somebody from the development team, give him more info, show him, is the grace period, how many keys did it have, which backend actually returned this to the cloud. if you have multiple servers on HTTP caching, you can have a situation where you get an error, then it's okay. You get an error, then it's okay. Wow, just maybe one backend is broken, so you can fix that one backend. So we all love testing, we all doing it. Yes, but yeah, you should do it. Varnish guys already thought about it, so they had their own Varnish test suite. See, you just write server request and response and run them through against your configuration to see if it's matches. So it's unit test kind of time. So although it may seem like point to point, you're actually never leaving Varnish. So you just test how will my configuration work in Varnish. When it comes to performance testing, Siege, yeah, it's sort of bad. So when you're doing HTTP caching testing, one thing that you really need is a good amount of power to test it. If you run 10 users on your HTTP cache, okay, you will see that it's cool, but you will not get the good thing. So when you're doing testing with HTTP caching, use large numbers. Rotate URLs, because a lot of times problems can be either too low memory than your Varnish, or editing policies, or just the two URLs affect each other and can create problems in your setup. So use it. And again, Varnish has its own monitoring tools, so you can look into its memory consumptions, what's actually going on. Now we tested it, we implemented it, so we want to see how it works. Varnish has metric tools, which is console-based, but there are some, most of the monitoring and metric systems provide some kind of modules that you can plug in with your Varnish to get metrics. Example below is example from Datadog. New Relic has it, Kibana has it. Every name that thinks of itself good will probably have some kind of support for Varnish. So in Varnish CLI tools, you can see what's actually my server doing, how many requests did it receive, how many of them were misses, how many of them were hits. And another thing that is mostly associated with HTTP caching is caching rate. So everyone likes to say, oh, I have a 99.5% caching rate, I'm great. Maybe. It's again the same with the stale content, the same with the DTL, depends on your application. For content providers, for heavy read sites, you want to get to 99%. This is good. Don't fool yourself that you will have 100. So if you have a user login, you will not have 100. If you have any kind of user interaction, voting, comments, you will not have 100. So try to figure out where you're happy with. This is not the only metric that shows you how good you are. Your site, your speed shows you, your resources consumption shows you a good balance when you're saying. If you have something that is really highly dynamic content, banking applications or something like that, there are places where you can cache. For example, back to GitHub example, you don't want to cache builds and stuff like that. You want to cache reports, you want to cache raw data, you want to cache history. That's a good example that you can cache. There are things that you should not cache. So with that in mind, there is a lot more I didn't have time or didn't actually talk about. So I hope this encourages you to think about it, to maybe find a way that you can get to that next level, to the next big thing that might be for your project that you can focus more on delivering instead of hustling. Okay, I need to make this fast, I need to make it fast. Maybe one like a small story. So everyone who uses Symfony knows about the tree. It's awful, it's terrible, monetization, you cannot optimize. So there are two ways you can go. You can say, okay, I will optimize the tree, I will do everything manually. Why? It costs you development time. Take the tree, the HTTP cache in front of you. All of a sudden, you have an application that is really easy to develop, but it's fast because somebody else took care of the performance problems. That's it. Go out and use it. Yes.
So HTTPS.
Yeah.
How hard is it to implement like, I don't know, 50 projects on the same server and make it offload each one?
Well, it depends. Where is your SSL termination? It should be in front. Don't
What?
in front of HTTP cache. Yeah. So you have the usual setup is HTTP termination, so this is my safe zone, this is my environment, which is secure, bulletproof, and inside you have HTTP communication with Elastic, with MySQL. So yeah, terminate the SSL, then use go to the cache. It works. Any other questions? And I knew at least one.
Yeah, I have to ask a question.
Yeah.
So when you are doing invalidation, are you doing it like in background, or how are you doing validation content or whatever? Not what your editors or users are generating.
Okay, you just started going where. So basically, the question is how and where. Where is where the change happens. So if you have a CMS that publishes the article, this is where your signal comes from. This signals to other part of your system, hey, this content is no longer that updated. So again, if you're using Symfony, you can have simply as an event listener saying on update of article, get the article ID and generate a background response either by job queue or direct, which depends on the performance. Just ping a varnish service saying purge this object. It's a lot of fun part of the implementation. It's not just like one solution. If you have a CMS can signal that for this is mostly for passive, for active validation. For passive one, the HTTP layer is already.
Come on, guys.
Do you know if Varnish, when it's trying to fetch all the edge side include blocks, does it do it parallel or does it do one by one?
Good question, and no. In versions 4, there are some, well, basically, I would describe it as undefined behavior, but in most cases, no. It goes one by one. It goes one request at a time. So if it's a cold cache, yeah, you would have all that little bit of slow time, but when it's warm cache, it's never the case. I mean, it's rarely the case when you request a page and it has 10, 15 components that all of them are invalid. In most cases, it's just one.
Any more questions?
Yeah, if we're using the edge side include, do you prefer to, I don't know, skip edge side include in terms of parts of the pages that are user specific, like user manual or whatnot, use Ajax instead, or what would be your best practice?
Asset include doesn't mandate HTTP caching. It's just when you compare asset includes and Ajax, it's just a matter of who is lazy fetching that one. Is it Edge for you, or is it Ajax? And again, it depends. If you want to serve a page right away, you will leave it to the Edge. Edge can do it really fast, yeah, especially because it's communicating directly with the server. Again, it depends if your backend is slow and you want to serve some kind of content to the user. You will probably use lazy loading with Ajax, because then you can show him the page saying, hey, I'm doing the extra work for you. But if there are some small components, you can leave it to the Edge. If you're using Twig, it's the matter of switching between Edge that includes and Ajax is simple as changing render SCR with render include some other extension that you're using. It's, from the code side, it's very little change. It depends on scenarios, and if you see something is slow, you can switch from ACI to Ajax until you fix it. So we have that option as well. So because there are similar concepts, it's like really nice to switch between the two.
Okay. I will need like 2 minutes per time, so we have been sitting for 45 minutes. Time for a little exercise. Please raise your hand if your company is hiring at the moment, and okay, this company is hiring. Okay, those who are maybe looking for some there. Also, we can, if you're interested. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. Please, once we publish the event on Join It, leave a feedback and enter our random system for getting a prize. Please don't take my random prize. functions. Okay, thank you, and we are probably going to have things somewhere. Things are not sponsored, but if you are willing to sponsor, okay, raise your hand. Okay, I didn't think so. Thank you.